so bad everywhere in this whole.
Hello, Ann Arbor! What's good, Michigan? Are we ready to nominate and be on the road to nominate Bernie Sanders for president this Tuesday? I want to start off today, first of all, we love you back. We love you right back. We want to start off today, of course, recognizing International Women's Day. To all the powerful ladies and gender non-conforming femmes out there, we're here for you. Thank you for changing the world. I also want to start off today by acknowledging and thanking Reverend Jesse Jackson for his endorsement of Senator Bernie Sanders for president. And I want to start with that because I want to talk a little bit about the significance of Reverend Jackson's endorsement, because if we don't know where we're coming from, it's a little harder to figure out where we're going. Reverend Jesse Jackson ran for president long before it was popular to champion progressive causes in the way that it is today. He fought for health care as a human right. He fought for the end of endless wars. And no one expected him to surge at the polls in 1984. But then he won Nevada. And the powerful and moneyed and conservative parts of our politics began to scramble. They began to panic. Because what he started to do was put together a rainbow coalition of everyday Americans to fight for our common cause. A rainbow coalition to fight for racial justice, for economic justice, for human rights. And politics like that have always been deemed unelectable in this country. But he almost got it. And I want to talk a little bit because in 1984, Reverend Jackson delivered a speech known as the David and Goliath speech. And he said, it's time for a new course, a new coalition of new leadership, a choice, a chance. Now, listen to this. This was his analysis back then in 1984, that Reagan won not by genius. He won while we were asleep. He won by the margin of despair. He won by the fracture of our coalition, by the margin of racial division. He won by default. Does that sound familiar, Michigan? And he closed with the story of a little shepherd boy named David, where everyone was scared of Goliath. Michigan, we have Goliaths in our country today. The Goliath of the fossil fuel industry, the Goliath of big pharma, the Goliath of the role of big money in politics. These are powerful, powerful forces. And we are David. We are David. David, all of us, the little guys. What David had to do before he confronted Goliath was to shed his unnecessary clothes. This is something that Jackson discussed in his speech. And I want us to recognize this moment that we're in on the eve of Tuesday, what we have to shed in order to grow. Because in order for us to grow, in order for us to win, we have to grow. We have to grow. We must be inclusive. We must bring more people into this movement. We must shed the unnecessary clothes of cynicism and exclusion. And we must turn towards an embracing posture where all people are welcome into a people's movement of the United States of America to establish free healthcare, to establish Medicare for all, to fight for a living wage, to demand humanity at our border. That is what this movement is all about. Michigan, we have a choice to make. In November, we will do everything we can to defeat that margin of despair. We will do everything we can to defeat that margin of despair. The question is how? Will we defeat it by going back to how things were? Or will we defeat it by fighting for working people in every corner and every pocket of the United States of America, from the South Bronx to Ann Arbor to El Paso? We have to make sure that we win this by fighting for someone we don't know. So the key is, all of us need to go to the polls and bring 5 people with us on Tuesday. I spoke with Reverend Jackson today. I called him and I asked him, I said, Reverend, if you were to share something with the folks in Ann Arbor today, what would you share with them? And here is what he told me to pass along. He said, tell them that we have survived apart. Now we must learn how to live together. We have survived apart. We must learn how to live together. This moment we are here because we have been separated from each other. As Sister Rashida Tlaib here in Michigan says, we are not divided, we are disconnected. That is at its core our problem today. And that means that the antithesis of that is to connect, to fight for someone you don't know, to love our neighbor, to bring people into the cause, to listen, to adapt, to open a posture of acceptance. That is what we must do in order to win on Tuesday. The Reverend said one more thing. That it is coalitions that win big victories. Coalitions that win big victories. So ask yourselves, who are we building coalitions with? How am I coalition building today? I want to leave you with a story. Because as Reverend Jackson was running, he came to the state of Michigan and he won. He won the state of Michigan. And at this point, some of the most powerful and conservative parts of the party really began to panic. And then, shortly after Michigan, came several more caucuses. And there was a mayor of a small city called Burlington, Vermont, in 1984, who had won a shocking victory to the mayoral seat. And it was time for the Vermont caucuses to come around. And Mayor Sanders stood up to break with the common consensus and endorse Reverend Jesse Jackson for president. He stood up and delivered that speech in the Vermont caucuses. He was yelled at. He was hit. But he said, this is our opportunity to bring millions of working people into our political process and transform who America can work for. Michigan, I am here here supporting Senator Bernie Sanders for president. Because when I ran just 2 years ago, when we first started, it was profoundly lonely. No one was on our side. No one. Even the Women's Equality Party endorsed a man over me. But, you know who was there? Early? The people. The people's movement. And the movement of not me, us was there early. When it did not seem likely, you were there early. When it seemed improbable, you knocked on doors. When it seemed like didn't make any political convenient, or it was not politically convenient to challenge a powerful member within their own party, you were there knocking doors, because we knew that what was most important was establishing Medicare for all, tuition-free public colleges and universities, and more. Michigan and Ann Arbor, on Tuesday, this is our moment. The time is now. The time is now. And what started and what echoed earlier, what we often say is that history often may not repeat itself, but it does rhyme. It does rhyme. And on Tuesday, we can change, we can do this again, we can change, and we can end that stanza. Because we can elect Senator Bernie Sanders for President of the United States. So with that, I want to thank you all for being here. We love you back. Ask yourself and make your list. Make your list of the 5 people you're going to bring with you at the polls on Tuesday. And with that, I'd like to introduce to you Senator Bernie